She actually talked to me, man.
Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
I've really gotten into the bad habit of asking a huge amount of questions lately.
It's just a question between friends. You know?
You go to one of those cappuccino places, they let you just sit there.
What are we gonna do there? Talk?
We can talk.
I'll go if I don't have to talk.
She actually talked to me, man.
All right, well, welcome to episode number 2 of the 5 Great Questions podcast. As I said before, I don't know if there will be 29 more episodes or if this is the final episode. We have no idea, but I'm confident that my experiences of meeting people and collecting stories will yield fruitful stories from here to eternity, really. So I'm not worried about that. With me today is my longtime friend, Chris. Chris, say hello.
Hello.
And as always, Chris has been emailed the 5 great questions. Of course, there are more than 5, but I just picked my best 5 at the time of the interview. Chris has received these 5 questions just before coming on air. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So you have had time to peruse these 5 questions. Some might have, what we would call shorter small talk answers, but are still fun. And some, depending on the person, that's why I send 5, might have a story involved. And that's what I'm interested in. So I'm hoping that, and again, this is a lot of trust on my part, because I'm picking people that I'm trusting are going to give me and the audience a good story from one of those questions. Do you feel, Mr. Chris, do you feel confident that you're going to provide a good story from one of those 5 questions? You know what? The truth is you could choose more than one, but let's start with one.
I think I've got it. Yeah, I think I've got a story. I mean, I hope it's a good story. I hope I can tell it well.
Okay.
So, yes.
Do you want to do a little setup, or do you want to start by telling us which question you thought was which question sparked you?
Well, I think you were asking about things from a time, an analog time, things that basically before the kind of all-inclusive, your life is on your phone, you're constantly connected, and
Yes.
and what is the story from that time that might be kind of fun to look back and remember what life was like before all of the connection issues kind of started.
Okay.
Yeah?
So that's fine with me. So is this going to involve caller ID?
No, I don't think it'll involve caller ID, although that is a good story. I've got one for you that is from this time, but it's a little bit different one than that. Is it all right or no?
That's okay. It's all up
right.
to you, man. This is
Sounds
you.
good. Okay,
All right.
so the time is the early 2000s, and yes, the internet existed, but no, it was not on your phone. At least it wasn't on my phone. I certainly didn't have anything close to a BlackBerry or anything like that. I was a young man who had made a terrible mistake of choosing to go to law school.
Let's admit that choice is subjective in retrospect.
True. I mean, honestly, it could have gone either way. When I made the choice, it seemed like a good idea. And so I went to law school with the best of intentions, worked my very hardest, found myself failing out by 1.5 points, a point and a half, after working the hardest I had ever worked up to that point academically or anything like that. And what I found out when I was in law school is like hard work is very important, but however, there are also just some really, really smart people out there. And I feel like I have a certain level of intelligence, but some people are just beyond the pale geniuses, and I'm not one of them. And I'm sure if the situations might have been different, or if I had done it at a different time in my life, I might have made the cut and I might be a lawyer right now. But that didn't happen. I didn't make the cut. And so I found myself in pretty short order failing out of law school, and then moving from the apartment that I had been living in, which is right next to the law school, right downtown San Diego, and then moving out to some friends of mine. They didn't have an extra room, but they had like a space in the garage that I think I was renting for like $300 a month. And and I
Well,
was scrambling at this point, right? Because my plan up until a week prior to that had been to go on to year 2 of law school and then year 3 of law school and then try and figure things out from there. But what ended up happening is that I had like no plan B at all, and I had to think really fast on my feet. So one of the things I knew I needed to do relatively quickly was figure out what I was going to do for work. And the first thing that came to my mind was that I really wanted to try and get outside and do something with my hands. And for whatever reason, I'm not even sure how it happened, I found myself working on these things called infinite pools, where basically you would be constructing these huge pools in these backyards in like the greater San Diego area, just massive, massive pools. And they would have these like lips on them where the water would flow over so you couldn't see the edge. They were called infinity pools. They're probably a lot more common now. And and it was awesome. It didn't pay very well at all, and I was the brand new kid on the crew, and so I found myself inside of these huge water tanks underground, like digging out because the backhoe or whatever would knock dirt in, and you'd find yourself digging out, like cleaning out the water tank. And if you had any kind of claustrophobia, which I didn't know I had until I was underground, you you were having a pretty bad day. So that's where I found myself. And I'm talking like within 3 weeks of having been in law school, I am in like, ankle deep muddy water with a bucket, like bailing out some, 500-gallon thing, and it's hot and I'm sweaty, and like this is my life now. This is what
okay.
I'm
Did
doing.
do you want me to make a comparison or a joke regarding that these were called infinity pools? Is
Yeah.
that the kind of future you were looking at in the
Well, I
situation,
mean,
or?
and to be quite frank, I mean, with the kind of like debt I had coming out of law school, this was going to be happening for a while. There was going to be a few years of just sucking it up and working hard. So that's the position I was in, living in a friend's garage, going to this job where I'm underground for most of the day, and it's not fun, and I got to figure out what to do next. And meanwhile, in the little spare time that I have, I am, for whatever reason, I'm finding myself drawn to the what do they call it, the afternoon like replays. What do they call this, the what is it
Uh,
called?
well, reruns. The
The
reruns.
reruns, that's
Yeah,
right. I,
yeah.
I'm finding myself drawn to the reruns of a specific show. And show that show is Dawson's Creek. Now you might think that it was because of, I think that the girl's name was Joey in the show. It was not. It was not because of Pacey or even Dawson. It was because I really, really liked the landscape of the TV show. I thought that looked like a beautiful place to live. And when you're spending your days under the ground digging out infinity pool reservoirs, and you're spending your nights sleeping in someone's spare space in a garage, you start to kind of do some research. So I looked up online, and I guess this is not the analog part of the story yet, but I did. I looked up online, where is this thing being filmed? Because I had never seen any kind of like landscape like that before. And, turns out it was being filmed in North Carolina, in a town called Wilmington. Now, I was living in San Diego. I was living right outside of San Diego State, right on Montezuma Boulevard, which is just right next. It's in La Mesa. It's right next to the San Diego State campus. So, I mean, you could not be more like opposite the side of the country where this thing was being filmed. But I was drawn to it. I was just certain that this was the place for me. And fortunately for myself, I had written a screen I had written a screenplay that I thought would be perfect to share with the good people at Screen Gems Studios, which is where Dawson's Creek was being filmed. So Frank Capra III, who you probably know, probably his grandfather from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, he had, for whatever reason, decided to make a film studio in North Carolina. I'm sure it was for like the tax credits or whatever. And he built it in Wilmington, and that is where they were filming. Warner Brothers was filming Dawson's Creek. And so I did a little research, and I said, that looks pretty amazing. And so I came up with a plan. It was not a good plan, but it was a plan. And the plan was to take my screenplay to fill what little possessions I had into my car, to take myself and my belongings and my screenplay to Wilmington, North Carolina, to meet the people who made Dawson's Creek, and to get my film made. This was my plan, and
So
so I
you hold on. So just take a breath.
yes.
So, and let's remind the audience, just 2 to 3 years prior, you had graduated from what? From a little junior college, or where did you graduate from prior to this? Let's just set the stage.
Oh yeah, so I had graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a pretty good GPA and stuff. Like maybe like a year and a half earlier. No, I think they're okay. So
And an
all right,
asterisk by your name? Like, did
yeah,
you actually graduate with honors?
yeah, magna cum laude, yes,
Okay,
and
so magna cum laude,
well, but
not just a pretty
let's
good
be
GPA.
yeah, but
Okay,
let's be completely fair. That was a surprise for all of us. Let's let's just be. I
it
mean,
doesn't matter. Your work resulted in you graduating magna cum laude, and then you
yes.
go to law school, and
Well,
then
I mean,
it doesn't
this,
work out. No, it's okay. It doesn't work out,
yeah.
and then now you're in someone's garage or basement or whatever,
Oh yes.
and so you're working underground and you're living underground.
Well,
Is
not
that
under yes,
correct?
but outside in the yes in the
But
the rough and tumble elements of San
okay.
Diego.
Okay. And meanwhile, your imagination is playing with this fictional town where the girls are cute and the money is flowing and the convertibles are probably flowing too,
Oh
and you
yes.
and you can see yourself in that setting. Is that correct?
I just thought, if they're making movies in a place that's not Hollywood, because I actually lived with you as your roommate in Culver City for a year, and I was like, well, this is not the place for me. But that's kind of where I was like, oh, this could be fun. Like making
Yes.
movies could be a blast. But I would never want to do it living in Hollywood, just from my experience, which was probably too short of a time. But just being honest with myself, being like, well, the idea of being around something that creative for a living, that sounds like a blast. But if I could do it somewhere that didn't like have wall to wall concrete, that would be what would be ideal for me. And so I was
Okay.
thinking,
So you thought you found a Hollywood outside of Hollywood. I'm just trying to
yeah,
summarize. Okay.
yes. I
Okay,
thought,
but now the only question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to let you go, is the level of risk that you are trading is what's interesting to me. So you did the hard work of college, you graduated magna cum laude,
yes,
and
sir.
you gave it an honest college try for law school. Let's be honest. Not everybody makes it. You gave it an honest college try, and
Sir.
then you want to trade that for one of the highest uncertainty situations known to Western culture, which is trying to get a screenplay sold or
Oh yeah,
picked up. Okay, I just
yeah.
want to. Okay,
Well,
continue.
and to be honest, it was probably just based on the idea that I really didn't have anything else going on at the time. This was probably, of all of the options I had, this could have been the best one.
Okay, what happens there? You're in the garage in San Diego.
Yeah, so I'm in the garage in San Diego, and I have to get to Wilmington, North Carolina, and this is where things stop being or start. You start to understand how things were analog at the time as opposed to now. I had to plan that trip from San Diego to get to North Carolina, and I had been around the United States once before this, but I was 8 and I was not driving, and so it was definitely like one of these things where I had to figure out, okay, well, how much money am I going to need for gas? Am I going to be able to make that happen? What are the roads I'm going to take? Where am I going to stay? Am I going to sleep in my car? All this stuff had to be figured out before I left, and I put together this folder, like, a 3-ring binder full of directions from where I was to where I wanted to go. And then at some point, I just kind of had to head out, and I just kind of started driving east and
What?
took.
Hold on. What? Sorry, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. I know the audience, if anyone's listening to this, is thinking, just let him talk. I never heard about the binder before, so that's
Oh yeah.
interesting to me. Okay. Number two, what did you say goodbye to your friends? Because you didn't just have strangers in San Diego, you had friends. I want to know
Yeah.
what you said to your friends.
Well, that's the good thing about having some good friends. When this happened, I did have 2 or 3 really good friends that I'd had since I was pretty young, who lived right in the area, and so we had talked for days, actually weeks at that point, just kind of about like, what do you do when the plan for your life that you kind of set your sight on and you put your entire effort into, what do you do when that doesn't work out? What's the next step? So what do you do if you're basically at a point where you got to try something different, and you're still, I mean, I was still under 25. I think I was 20, 22, 23 when this happened. 23, I think. And so in my mind, especially the way that I was raised and stuff, I felt like I was super long in the tooth. But honestly, 23 is nothing. And we know that now at, I'll turn 45 this year. But when I was 23 years old and I was looking at, I think it was like $35,000 of debt, and that's back when $35,000 was $35,000. Now it's not the
70.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different system now. But back then, that was, I was certain, looking at that even if I got a good job with the wind at my back, it was going to be 5 to 10 years of just solid, you know, unpleasant, hard, you know, jobs, and that's what it turned out to be, to get out of that
So
hole. But
let's keep it. So what did you say to your friends when you were leaving, when you were determined to go? I don't want to mean the talking before, but what did you just the day before you left? That's what I want to
I,
hear.
I honestly, I don't remember. I probably said, "Hey guys, I'm going, and I'm not coming back. I'm heading out to check out Wilmington." And I don't even know if it got more specific. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I think I probably was just said goodbye, and I don't know that we had. I don't know that I had a good plan at that point. I think it was just,
Okay, so you hit the road and you go east.
yeah. And I had never been, probably past, I don't know, Scottsdale, Arizona, on my own prior to that. And so I'm driving out, and I do remember, you're using these maps, and you have a basic outline of where you're going, and you just don't know what to expect. So the first thing that kind of shocked me was the beauty of New Mexico, because I know I've been to New Mexico at some point in my life before then, but I had never seen like those mountains were so amazing and like purple, just because of the time of year and the sun, the way it was setting. It was amazing. And then I remember driving into West Texas, and I don't mean any offense to Texas, but I did not find that part of Texas to be beautiful. And honestly, I mean, it took me a while. Once I finally got to the part of Texas where there's hills and trees, and that was pretty great. And the thing I do remember though is that by the time I'm in Texas, and I didn't have any kind of a digital camera or anything, so I had one of those little disposable Kodak, cameras. I'd stop and take pictures, and I knew I wanted to remember the places that I had been, and so I got this panoramic camera, and you would just, like, I didn't have enough money to stay in like nice hotels or anything, so I'd, sleep at a truck stop or whatever like that, and then as the sun was rising, I can remember like driving on top of some of those overpasses in Texas and just taking pictures of just like vast endless sunrises and stuff like that. It was really cool. It was really fun. But it was definitely a strange kind of, almost like a, I don't, I it wasn't like, you're definitely alone, but you're not really that lonely as you're driving. And certainly like it's a task, you've set yourself a goal. And so you feel like you've got a reason to keep moving forward. And it was fun. It was a good trip out. I think as you're getting closer to the Atlanta area, that part of the country is beautiful. And then I cut out somewhere in there. I started smoking, and I didn't stop for about 15 about 15 years. So,
Well,
anyways,
so okay. So side note. Okay.
side note,
Okay. So okay. So
poor
you
life choice.
you were so hold on. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but I just give me the short. So you're at a truck stop. I'm going to
Yeah,
guess you're getting gas.
yeah.
Okay, you walk inside. I know how it works. There, all those things are taunting you. All those colors and soda and sugar and prices and whatever. You can't have alcohol because you're driving. And then what happens?
Well, I mean, it's not like I'd never smoked anything before. Cigars were something I'd have every once in a while growing up with friends and stuff, or things like that. But I do remember on this specific trip, as I'm driving, thinking to myself, well, if there was ever a time to start smoking, now would be the time. And I just kind of decided I'm gonna give this a shot. So trying different cigarettes and seeing which ones I liked, trying to get the hold it right in your hand, which is a very interesting process. There's a right way and a wrong way to hold a cigarette, and when you're starting out, you don't know how to hold it right. And then if you're smoking in your car, which I was, like there's like the whole like how far down do you roll the window so it doesn't come back onto you, and there's a whole thing you're learning. It's a skill, is what I'm saying. You're learning a skill, and that was kind of maybe I was just looking for a hobby at the time, and so this seemed as good as any. And you tried the different types. Did you like the stuff with the menthol? No, I do not like the stuff with the menthol. Did
And
you like?
what did you land on?
Well, okay, so for a time, it was the cheapest one I could find because I am basically a thrifty person. But after a while, I got to the point where oh gosh, American Spirits, the organic light blue American Spirits. It took me 15 years to stop smoking, and those were the ones that I would buy a pack of those each week, and I'd have one. There's 20 in a pack. I'd have one or two of them a night, and at least once a week for that 15-year period, I'd like at some point in the week I'd quit. I'd crumple up the pack. I'd throw it away, and before the next week was out, I'd have another pack because they're not kidding. You start smoking those things, it's like trying to quit eating bacon or something, or stop drinking coffee. It's a very
So
pleasant way to spend a moment. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. So okay, this is a side note. I didn't know. I
Sorry.
didn't. I knew that, but I didn't know how long it lasted. So you're telling
Yeah.
me that lasted after you were married?
Well, this was the thing. I mean, that was definitely the intention, was to quit. I had every intention to quit, and I did eventually quit. It's been
It's okay,
about
but
five years.
yes or no? Did this last
Yes,
after you?
yes. And I mean, it was one of those things where I was, in conversation with my wife, with Chrissy, and I was like, hey, this is something I'd like to stop at some point. And she's like, I'd like it if you stopped too. And it was just like, all right, well, we'll work on that. And it was never like, I had maybe 2 cigarettes a day at the end of the day, but it was
Okay,
something that
that's okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's okay. I think most people listening would understand. Let's get you to Wilmington and let's hear what happens in Wilmington.
Okay, so I'm driving into Wilmington, and I'll tell you right now, there have been a lot of places where I have gone where when I got there, it was a letdown. Okay, that is not the case in Wilmington, North Carolina. In Wilmington, North Carolina, when I showed up, the first surprise that anyone who's been there knows this, but I had no idea, is that when you're showing up in the town, this river that runs through the town is amazing. It's beautiful. It's not like a river that you would think of in California. It's big. There's actually a little bit up the way from Wilmington. There's like a naval ship that's been like docked, pretty close to Wilmington, and it's a full on ship in this river, and you come across into the city, and the boardwalk downtown, it's fantastic. It's like it's got just like a walkway right along the river. It's beautiful. I remember I had my guitar with me, and I went to an open mic night, and it was a ton of fun. Played a song at the open mic night. One of the guys introduced me to Pat's Blue Ribbon. That was pretty cool. Uh,
Okay, so you're not. Okay, number one, you've got a garage. Can you find somewhere to set your laptop? That's number one.
well, let's see if maybe we
Okay.
go. How's that? That better?
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
All right.
Okay. So number one, so far you're sleeping in your car. I just want to give you a summary. So far, we're 2 years removed from graduating magna cum laude from Cal Poly,
Oh
and
yes.
you're smoking the cheapest American spirits, drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, and sleeping in your car. I just want to catch everyone up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Continue. Okay.
So I had planned for a couple of days in Wilmington where I could stay in a hotel. And so I did. When I got to Wilmington, I actually got myself a hotel room, which was pretty nice because I had been staying, in my car for the most part on the whole drive over. And then one night, I remember I walked on down to the in. If you've been, I most of you probably haven't been to Wilmington, but if you've been to Wilmington, like downtown Wilmington, there's like kind of like a place where there's several places where you can fish kind of off the pier or something like that. And so I remember I had this total this evening where I was walking down this pier, and I sat down with this local guy who was fishing, and we just kind of talked about, I don't even remember what it was, just kind of like life. But I remember his name was Famous. That was his name. His name was Famous, and he was just an African American man. He was probably in his like 60s, maybe his 70s. Although I didn't ask him his age or anything, and I don't, for whatever reason, um, I I don't think either one of us said this line, but the line that keeps on coming up whenever I think about that conversation with the guy named Famous, I always think about the line, as long as you're lying to yourself, you might as well go on lying to everybody else. I remember that line. I don't know why, but that's the line. As long as you're lying to yourself, you might as well keep on lying to everybody else, or something like that. And that was a really fun time, just getting to know, not even really getting to know somebody, but just kind of like hanging out with somebody. And it was just one of those, I'm sure you've been somewhere where you don't know anybody and you sit down and you start talking to them. It was just a good conversation. So anyways, the next day, I went, I had some places I wanted to see, some locations from the Dawson's Creek that I always wanted to check out. So I checked in with the local people and said, okay, well, where were these scenes filmed? And so I found out where the beach scenes had been filmed, and I went over to see them. And then I figured out where some of the scenes for like the the home that like Dawson had lived in had like a dock that came out of the back of the home. And so I went and found the neighborhood where those homes existed, and that was really fun. And then I ended up figuring out where Screen Gems was, and I went over there. And from the experience that I'd had in Southern California, I expected Screen Gems to be set up similarly to Sony or something like that. And if you haven't been to Sony Studios or around Sony Studios, I mean, you can get to the front gates, but you can't get inside. I mean, it's unless you have an appointment or anything like that, you're not getting any closer. Well, Screen Gems, at least at the time I was there, was not like that. Screen Gems was like open, and you can just like walk in. So here's me. I'm 23 years old. I've driven across country. I've got my screenplay tucked underneath my underneath my shoulder, and I'm walking on the lot of Screen Gym Studios. And I walk around, and it's pretty cool to be there. And then I at some point it's lunchtime, so I decide I go over and I sit down to have some lunch, and I start talking to the guy who's running the, I don't know, I guess it's a cantina or something like that. And he starts talking about how,
I think it's called
um,
the commissary.
yeah, and he's just
Yeah.
talking about how he's worked on these different projects and the different people he's seen, and how it's a really fun place to work. And I mean, he knows, I'm sure he knows I'm not a regular there. I'm not sure that he had any curiosity at all of who I was. But at some point, I think it became clear that I was just kind of there with the screenplay under my shoulder or whatever. And I don't know. I just remember him being really kind, and I don't think he gave me the food, but he let me get the food and sit down in the thing. And sure enough, I'm sitting there and I'm eating, and I've got my screenplay in front of me, and I look over like two or three booths, and there is Frank Capra the third, and I know what he looks like. I don't remember how I found out what he looked like, but that was him. He's three booths over, and he's sitting there and he's having his food, and I've got my screenplay that I have brought all the way across country, that I could just now I could go and talk to this guy, and I could not bring myself to do that. And I mean, it would not have worked. I would have certainly failed. But to drive all the way across the country, be 3 booths away from that guy, and to not just at least go up and say, "Hey, I'm so and so from California, and this is my," I couldn't do it, and so I
Did
left.
you what? Okay, what was the screenplay called? Screenplay?
Oh no, it was Homestead Bicycles. That was the one. So,
Oh boy.
so I left Homestead Bicycles screenplay in the commissary at Screen Jim's studios, and I got back in my car, and I started driving home. And I really had no idea how to get home. I mean, I knew basically what I had a
Wait,
route that.
okay, hold on. So you didn't go back to the hotel or back to the open mic or back to the fishing with Famous or walk around the town or look for more locations. You got straight in your car and started driving west.
That's my recollection. Like honestly, I don't think I had ever been in a town where I had felt like more just like, oh, this is really fun. This feels like my speed. These people seem awesome. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I'm not gonna say that. There was a sense there where like you kind of felt like it didn't it didn't totally fit, but no place totally fits. I mean, I've been to several towns since then when I've thought to myself, well, if I ever found a place that felt like home, I'd probably just go there, and try and get started or whatever. And now at this stage in my life, I mean, I am where we are, and we're gonna be here for a while. We have kids, and we're set, to be here until the kids stop needing us to, till they're on their way. But at that point in my life, I don't think I'd ever been anywhere before where just everything felt like, oh yeah, this could make sense. And the killer of it was is that at the same time I was having that thought, the other side of my mind was saying, oh yeah, but I've got this huge amount of debt I got to take care of, and I have no idea how I could. I mean, I just couldn't figure out how I would do that.
So
And
I
then,
guess my last question is, did you have an active conversation with yourself after not talking to Frank Capra III, where you said, one of two things? Wow, I guess this was just a little diversion and like a vacation, and I guess it's done. Or, oh shoot, I'm not sure if I want this path.
well, I mean, I've talked to myself several times about it, and I think what I've come up with is the idea
No,
that I
no, no, no.
wish.
Sorry. Let's go. I'm talking about as you're leaving. Right then, what was, or do you not remember? What were
Uh,
you thinking right when you left? Like you literally just got in your car. Oh well, I guess I get better go pay off that debt. Let's go.
I mean,
Maybe.
honestly, yeah. Well, I mean, you've known me for a long time, and if there's one thing that I mean is true about myself, is that I don't always have the best ability to be like self-aware in the moment of what's happening. I just kind of act or react, and then it takes years to figure out why I did that. Sometimes I don't ever know why I did what I did. And I think maybe I'm not. Maybe that's not the same for everybody, but I do remember really wishing after the fact that I had had the wherewithal much earlier in life to ask myself like questions like, okay, well, what is it that you want to do, or more importantly, like what type of a place would you like to, where would you like to live, type of a thing, and then kind of try to build some of my decisions off of that pattern, as opposed to, I think for much of my late teens and early 20s, I was really scrambling just to try and catch up to where I thought my peers already were, and then also to try and get some kind of a career, a label of some kind that was going to be like uh, official sounding, and adult type of thing. If I were to go
Well,
back and do it
yeah.
again, I probably wouldn't have spent that much time uh, pursuing those types of goals as much as I would have just tried to figure out like, well, what do you want to see when you look out of your window? Like that's the thing that was present in Wilmington, and it's been present in some other places I've lived too. But like you look outside the window in Wilmington, and there's beauty there. It's like natural beauty. There's things to see
Well,
and do.
is that your highest goal in life, or even one of the list of the top five things in life for most people? What they look out their window?
Oh well, I mean, I suppose no, but I mean, I guess like what I ended up doing for a living. I'm a teacher, and honestly, I could be teaching. I could be teaching in San Luis Obispo, or I could be teaching in Wilmington. Although I'll be honest with you, I've looked at the teachers' compensation in North Carolina, and that would probably be a mistake. But I mean, like,
So
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if I could talk to my younger self, I'd say, hey, shoot for those goals that you think are a little bit crazy, because even if you don't reach those goals, it's better to have shot for a goal that you are passionate about, that you something that you really want, as opposed to trying to do what you think is the right thing to do for whatever reason it might be, whether it's
so
like to
so did you? Well, so did you? I only have one more question. Did you? Do you now wish that you would have spoken to Frank Capra III?
I wish now that I had spoken to Frank Capra III and I had asked him for an entry level job at Screen Gems. I think I probably did the right thing by not showing him my screenplay. But I
And
think I did.
yet, if you would have gotten a job there,
Yeah.
you may not have met your wife.
Well, this is true, and I mean that's a good point. You can't look in the rearview mirror too much. I would say moving forward from that thing, one of the things that I did take away from that is just how much I do love, at least going to places that inspire, like beautiful places. If you can't live somewhere beautiful, at least getting out to the ocean, as often as you can, and getting to the mountains when you can, and seeing that kind of stuff. I do think when I think about what I'd like for my children, I think I'd love for my kids to be able to live somewhere where they have some beautiful, like, scenery and hiking options and things like
Okay,
that.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to downplay the value of living somewhere beautiful. Despite my ups and downs, I've actually lived in very beautiful places. I grew up in
Hmm.
the wine country. I've lived in Nevada City. I've lived in West Los Angeles. I've lived in nooks of the Hollywood Hills. I've lived in the poshest neighborhood in Nashville. I've lived in really great places. I don't want to downplay that, but you just told us a story about how you completely threw caution to the wind, drove across the country, slept in your car, didn't shower, started smoking, started drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, got to the location you wanted, didn't do what you wanted to do, and your biggest takeaway is about where you should be living?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah. No, it sounds.
understand what I'm asking or
I
no?
know
Okay. Okay.
there are other lessons I could have learned,
That's what I'm saying. Are there any other
but
lessons we can glean
but
from this? I
but
don't know.
honestly, if I was the kind of person who learned those other lessons, I probably would have never gotten in my car and driven over to Wilmington. I mean, that's just
Okay.
not who I am.
Okay.
I'm the kind of
Fair
person.
enough.
Yeah.
I mean, because you know what, Oatman, you can never go home again, Oatman. Basically.
That's
Okay.
right.
So, because you did start this by choosing the analog themed
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
what other analog stories can you grace me now that I've let you go? Can you grace me with the caller ID analog story to wrap us up?
Okay, so this is a similar situation for not having all the technology of the modern age. But I remember I had met a girl who was not from where I was from. She's from another town, and we dated. I don't think very long, maybe like 3 months. But it was a stinger when it was over, and we were not in touch for, I guess, maybe about 6 months. And during that time, she had started school across the country at another place. She had started college, and I was at that point living in my parents' spare room, and feeling all of the feelings that come along with being. I think it was 18. I was 18 years old, but still feeling like I was far too old to be living at home, and I was in my I was at the community college. It was not my favorite time of life, so I get a phone call on one of the kind of phone that you plug into the wall, and there's no caller ID. And I pick up the phone, and it's this girl that I had dated from, like 6 months earlier. And she's on the phone, and she's at college, and she's at a party. And there's like, I can hear two or three other people in the background. I don't know who they are because I have never met these people. And she wants me to tell her and her friends to retell a story of the time when we were dating, when I had done something kind of similar to the story I just mentioned, but but some kind of an impulsive, fun thing. And I remember in that moment having the only panic attack that I've ever had in my life. And I remember like my chest just tightening up, and my mind just being wanting to feel like I could tell the story in a way that was going to be normal and fun, and I couldn't do it. And I was, I started to breathe, like kind of hyperventilate, and I had to hang up the phone. I couldn't do it. And I hung up the phone, and I didn't talk to her, at least by phone again. After that, I think maybe we talked by letter once or twice or something like that. But I remember that feeling when the phone rang. You didn't know who was going to be on the other end of it, and you didn't have the option to be like, I think I'll just let this one go to voicemail. You had to either take the phone call, um, or I mean, just not know who had called. I mean, there was answering machines and stuff, but anyways, I remember that being one of the times in my life, the only time I've ever had, and I've had some pretty stressful moments. We talked about one earlier here where I failed out of law school and stuff, but I never had that feeling again, where it was just this complete, like it was like your body was panicked, and your mind, you were like, what are you doing? Just calm down. This is not the way you want to feel. But your mind wouldn't sync up with what your body was doing. But that was back in the days when you had like the Rolodex phone numbers and everything else. But yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's a good. Okay, thank you. So, last question that I always ask people that tell an analog story: have you told any of these stories to your kids, and what is their reaction of how you made it somewhere without a map or a phone or GPS or anything? How you overcame anything that now would be not even like, are they able? Do you think that they're able to grasp it, or is it like just a different language? Like they
I don't think so. I mean, I have told them some of these stories. Certainly, the one about going to Wilmington for sure, and they think it's a great story. They love it, but they're not able to understand, like, the Thomas Guide element of it, or the whole getting a map, or even using the internet to make yourself a printed copy of, because for them, I mean, honestly, my kids are pretty savvy kids. My son uh, drives himself or rides himself to and from school. But my younger kids, I don't know if they were on the other side of town, if they would know how to get back to home without a cell phone. I'm not positive about that. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure when that, like, but it seemed to be baked in when we were kids. You knew which way north and south and east and west were, just because you were alive, And we were just having this conversation with my youngest one this last week, just going in the car, figuring out, okay, well, which way is north? It's that way, and which way is south? Well, it's the opposite way, and how about east and west? And like,
Well, in
they don't
fairness
think
to
that
in
way.
fairness to your daughter, you lived near the ocean where the ocean breeze would always come from the west. So
Yeah,
you had the sun, obviously we all have, but you are, yeah, it's just like if you lived in Chicago, the lake is there, everything's north south based on the lake, like So in
yeah.
fairness to your daughter, you're living in a different area than you grew up in. So
In an area where everything looks the same in either direction for as far as you can see.
I guess the moral, because I've been trying and failing here, so I'm not going to go for any more morals. The moral of the story is don't let your kids start watching Dawson's Creek.
Uh, well, I mean, the moral of the story is like, I was trying so hard to make something happen, whether it was going to law school or driving to Wilmington. I was trying so hard to make something happen. And it wasn't until I finally just kind of came home and decided that I needed to, put all my efforts into paying off that law school debt, and just kind of got around to the things I really should have been doing years before. Which, I mean, I don't think ambition is bad, but like, just remember, like, you wake up at the right time, you get to work at the right time, you do your job, you come home, you pay your bills, and you be an adult, and then other stuff starts to happen. Like, when I met Chrissy, I was not in the exact perfect place, but I was definitely 4 years past where I had been when the story of Wilmington occurred. And a lot had changed in that time. I had paid off a lot of that debt. I hadn't paid off all that debt, but I paid off a lot of that debt. I had done some work, several years of work that was, just not fun, but it just needed to be done. And I think, for me, anyways, the ability to stop being, I don't know if you'd relate it to Peter Pan or if you'd relate it to like Don Quixote or whatever, but like the ability to stop being someone who's always chasing after some fantastic dream and to just focus on, hey, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z, step 1, 2, 3. That was when I really started to see some of the things that I deeply wanted for myself to start to happen, even though it certainly didn't happen in any way that I thought it was going to. It just, I was a type of a person that I was just, growing up. I don't know how to say it other than that. I think, I had a lot of decisions that I made when I was younger. I don't regret them, but I can't imagine making the same decisions knowing what I know now. It's just a different life,
Yes. So if I can summarize with relating to something you've already said, is it safe to say as we wrap up that you truly do care less about what you see out of your window now?
I mean, I'd love to move to the ocean. I'm not gonna lie.
You see how I keep failing to come up with just something that you can agree on and realize, wow, you have a family and your kids are beyond happy and they're productive and they're safe and healthy and they love where they live but
20 years later, I'm not.
What's that?
20 years later, I'm no longer like living for myself. I'm
Right,
living.
but even what I'm saying is what you see out of your window doesn't matter as much because what is inside the window, your family, your wife, your kids.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, why? Okay, why has it been so hard to say that?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy.
Yeah, no. I mean,
okay.
I honestly think I am blessed way more than I deserve, and I mean I stumbled just without any. There's nothing about. I mean, I don't know how, but yeah, here we are, and it's a good life, and I don't know how that happened, and I'm thrilled it did. But
okay.
yeah,
I'm gonna not try to have you connect the dots anymore because I can, but that's okay. That's okay. All right. Thank you for being part of episode 2.
Yes, sir.
Of 5 Great Questions podcast. Would you recommend this podcast to other people?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. If you're listening right now, you will find my email in the show notes. If you think you have a great story or would like to be part of this podcast in the future, please send me an email. You don't have to tell me the whole story. I like spontaneity, but if you just give me a summary, I would love to hear it. And without further ado, is Dawson's Creek still in syndication as far as you know?
I don't know. I've got the DVDs. I haven't watched them in years, but maybe I'll pull them out sometime soon.
All right, let's pull out Dawson's Creek and pull out that screenplay and dust everything off.
That sounds good. Hey, have a
All
great
right.
one. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, Chris.
Bye.
We'll see you later.